think that's going to work. I know it's on. So I had to give it a bogus title. I had to give it a fake title and a fake message to have it not require that. Hello everyone. Now let's see if hello Mark. So I don't know what happened to my Facebook today. Sorry. It's required a title and a message, and it's never done that ever. But we're up. So sorry about that. I think tomorrow I'll play with this tonight and see why it required that. That's never happened with Facebook. That must be some type of an update. But I was going crazy trying to figure that out. Okay, hello Elisa. Thank you all for joining. Had some Facebook issues today. Hello Rick. And Facebook always wins when you're having issues. So today, I think what we'll do is we'll go over some colors and what makes colors interesting. And if you have questions, go ahead and ask your questions. If I can answer them, I'll answer them. If not, I will look into them and I will get a response back, so you have that. So last week we did the how to read a color chart. Super important because it really gives you as an artist a lot of power. It's a major tool in your toolbox. And I was asked by a couple of you whether I would post that. And yes, I wrote out what each characteristic is, what it's made up of. So opacity, what it's made up of, how it works. And I will post that so you can go back and read that anytime. Hello Stella, hello Lisa, hello Violetta. So with that, and again, so sorry it took so long. Facebook just would not let me go to live. And you can't fight a machine and win. So some of the questions I've been asked many times is about blacks. So let's look at blacks. I'm going to bring this down so we can look at it together. Put this out of the way. Bring this over. Okay. So here we go. I brought 4 blacks that we can look at. So this is lunar black. Lunar black. And lunar black is the blackest black. It's also called Mars black. The neat thing about lunar black, as I've shown you before and I'll show you again, is when you put yellow, it'll actually move away from the yellow so you can see it. It's kind of a black that won't cloud over other colors that you have, which is very interesting. Then we have ivory black. This is ivory black. And ivory black has a subtle yellowish tint to it. Okay, ivory black. Okay, ivory black. Hello, Paula. Hello, Caroline. And so this is lamp black. Lamp black is the darkest black that we have. Lamp black, historically, they would take a lantern, put it under a piece of canvas. Soot would go to the top, and they'd beat the top of the canvas with a broom, collect all the soot, and make lamp black. So lamp black is the darkest black. And then in terms of Primitex, this is black tourmaline. So let me see if I'll just get this down so you can see even better. How's that? There we go. So this is black tourmaline, very granular, and that's because it's a Primitex, so you'd expect that. And then lunar black, which is a single pigment. It's a synthetic, extremely granulating. So there's our lunar black. And there's our black tourmaline. And then we have here the lamp black. That's what the lamp black looks like. Nowhere near as granulating. And then lastly, we have the ivory black. This is the ivory black. And the ivory black has that subtle, very subtle yellowish tint. Okay, and those are the 4 blacks. So here we go, those are the 4 blacks. Lamp black, lunar black, black tourmaline, and ivory black. So Melody asks, it's a great question. Let me see here, make sure I don't lose it. So Sue says, hello Melody. Sue says, what causes the granulation in the synthetics? That's a great question. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of that process today. Granulation is a really good concept for you to understand. So what causes it in the lunar black is really quite marvelous. The lunar black, you would never expect a synthetic, let alone a single pigment synthetic, to granulate. And that's because the weight is the same, the shape is the same, and the size is the same. It just happens that lunar black, the particle size, which approaches a nanoparticle size, it's about 23 microns. The thickness of a piece of paper is about 100 microns. So this is an incredibly small particle size. But the nature of these particles, they don't even want to be around each other. So they want to move away from each other. And that causes the granulation in lunar black. The other lunar colors we have are a series of pigments mixed together that causes the granulation. But this is extremely unique because it's a single synthetic pigment. So what causes it in things such as moonglow, let's look at moonglow for a moment. So here is moonglow, and here is shadow violet. Moonglow is made up of ultramarine blue, viridian, and anthraquinoid red. So, and then shadow violet, this one, is made up of pyrrole orange, viridian, and transparent orange, viridian, and ultramarine blue. So let's look at moonglow for a moment. So Karen says, my class created beautiful waterfalls with granulating permatex. That'd be neat to see. Jody, I've not heard about spinel black. Let me look into that, and I'll get back to you next week. So here we have moonglow, and moonglow is made with anthraquinoid red, which we also sell as a color. It's made with viridian, which we also sell as a color, and it's made of ultramarine, which we also sell. So moonglow, right here, is made up of anthraquinoid red, viridian, and ultramarine. We mix these 3 pigments while they're dry as pigments. We then encapsulate those into the gum arabic as the vehicle, and we create the moonglow. That's why you can add more than one color to the moonglow, is because it's really just considered to be a single color made up of several pigments. If you took ultramarine and mixed it with viridian and then mixed it with anthraquinoid red, you're kind of at the end of the limit there before you start getting, results that you don't want, because that's 3 different colors, right, that are already in gum arabic, and when you mix them together, you can probably do about 3. Whereas because the moonglow, which is made from these 3 pigments, You can mix that with, I don't know if you would want to do it or not, but you can certainly mix it with a raw sienna, and you could mix it with a quinacridone. All I'm trying to show you here is this would only count as 3, even though this color is made up of 3 pigments. Okay? Pretty neat. And so Eva says Moonglow is one of her all-time favorites. It's a very, very, very popular color. Very popular. Lots of things you can do with it. Very interesting. And again, the Moonglow has that slight reddish tint to it because the anthraquinoid red, and then the Shadow Violet has the slight orange because the transparent pyrrole orange. Okay, so let's look at something. Let's look at something else. So we did the blacks, we did the Shadow Violet and the Moonglow. Let's look at the Lapis. So Lapis was the first ultramarine, the first true ultramarine. It comes from lapis lazuli, which I will start showing you probably in 2 more sessions. Hello, Angela. Hello, Agnes. It comes from the lapis lazuli mineral, and then we process that, make this in-house from true lapis. And then we have the ultramarine, and we have the French ultramarine. Okay, so the true and first ultramarine, lapis, and then the 2 synthetics, ultramarine and French ultramarine. And as I was saying last time, the difference is the particle size on these 2 right here. They're both PB29, so this gets asked quite a lot. How do you get 2 colors from the same pigment? In this case, it's particle size. The ultramarine has a smaller particle on the PB29, so it moves toward the cool or green. The French has a slightly larger particle size of the PB29, pigment blue 29, and it moves toward the warm or the red. Okay? And let me show you. So this is French, this is Ultra, and this is Lapis. So here's what they look like in pigment format. So this is the ultramarine. It's actually quite beautiful. So that's ultramarine. This is Lapis. This is about 81, 82% pure Lapis. On the open market, this is about $4,000 a kilo. It's really, really, really expensive. To go from 80% to 90% is probably north of $25,000 a kilo. So very, very expensive. You would not see Lapis ever being sold like this unless you were paying about $150 a tube. Okay, that's how you know. When people say, well, I can sell you Lapis and it's this blue in a tube, it's ultramarine. I always tell people that when they ask me if you want to use something that's really blue Lapis, you can always use the synthetics. These are about $8 a kilo. These are about $4,000 a kilo. So big difference. And this is the French. And it's got, again, that really beautiful blue. Very beautiful. All right. So this is because of size. The difference between French and Ultra, PB29, Pigment Blue 29, is because of pigment size. So now let's look at another one. And this one is because of chemistry. Okay, so here we go. Here we have quinacridone violet, Here we have quinacridone violet. Here we have quinacridone rose. And here we have quinacridone red. These are all PV19, pigment violet number 19, each one of them. So here's one pigment violet number 19, which has 3 distinct shades. See those shades? So people say, well, how can you get a different color if it's the same pigment? And that's because the pigment number is one part of the chemistry, but then there's a big part of the chemistry that's underneath that's really heavy duty chemistry, that is the shade. Okay? So, and these are all 3 PV19, pigment violet 19, and the interesting thing is that the quinacridone molecule is 5 rings. That's what quin means. Quin means 5. So it's 5 rings. And on those rings, there's different beta and alpha particles. And where those alpha and beta particles get positioned is what determines the color. So these are all the same pigment with different alpha and beta particles on the molecule. And when those shift and change, and they have to be done at the manufacturing level of the pigment, the manufacturing of the particular pigment, you get the different shades. Okay? So that's how we have that from a chemical standpoint. So now we've seen it from the size standpoint. With the ultramarines, we've seen it from the size. And now from the PV19, we have seen it from the chemistry. Hello, Teresa from Ireland. Beautiful country. And let me show you another one. So here's another one, and this is because this one is because of classification. There is a coatings industry which then sets up what the classifications are. So here we see cobalt turquoise, and we see cerulean blue chromium. Okay, they don't really look much alike. However, they're both PB36, pigment blue 36. And people say, well, what do you do? What do you mix to make those different? Don't do anything. This is because how the coatings and other industries say, this is the classification these colors belong to. We're going to spend quite a bit of time going over that when we talk about the siennas and the ochres. They're very, very big families that get a lot of colors put into them, and we're going to go over that and explain that more. But I get asked this quite a bit. So these are 3 examples. We've seen one that's done because of size. We've seen another set that's done because of chemistry. And we see another set just because of where the classifying body puts these colors into. So these are both called PB36, although the chemistry is quite different between the 2 pigments. So Paula says, so that explains why I can't necessarily mix a perfect color when I see a mix of 2 or 3 pigments. That's correct, Paula. It's really how they're when we do, for example, the moon glow, we not only mix them dry, but then we spend a lot of time on how we mix them before we actually ever put them onto our 3-roll mills and de-aerate and set them up for the refraction and the reflection of light. So yes, that's correct. Okay, and then we go over any, as you think about this in the night and you say, wow, I have another question, ask your questions and we'll spend more time. We'll also spend quite a bit of time drawing the colors out so you can see them. I love doing that. And any color you want to see, you let me know and we'll look at it. I'll also show you these drawdowns, just so you know, these drawdowns are made from a 1:10 ratio. And what that means, it's 1 part distilled water to, it's 1 part of paint to 10 parts of distilled water. We then mix those around and we do a wash. That's in this here. Let me bring this up a little bit. We do a wash. We'll clean the brush off, put it back again, and then we just do these until we come to the end. So you can see we're first off the brush to last off the brush. Now these are kind of interesting too. This is the phthalo blue red shade and the phthalo blue green shade. And these are pigment blue 15:6 and :4. Actually :3. And so all that tells you, this is pigment blue number 15. And this right here, which is saying what the shade is, just the shading shows you the 2 different colors. Okay? So still the same pigment, different shade. Okay, let me show you another one. So what we do is we put these into our photospectrophotometer. So this machine here is a xenon phaedometer, and the xenon phaedometer right here, that tests for light fastness. It's about the size of a Coke machine. It's a very large machine. It's over 6 feet high, and inside of it has a turntable and has a computer interface, and we tell it how much light over what period of time, and that's how we test for light fastness. This machine right here is a photospectrophotometer, and we get each one of these cards, and we present it right here, and there's a whole computer setup that's made for this. We have a bunch of computers, and it tells us where it lies on the C-Lab. So we know exactly where it is. We know the previous time we made it where it lies, and what we'll do is we will go back and forth until we have them the same. And then the chemist will give that batch ticket to the floor. He'll actually, because he's already made it inside the laboratory, the new batch, he'll then present that formulation to the floor, and then they'll make it. That's how we do it. It's really the only way that you can say you have continuity, because you can't see the minute shift in light with the naked eye. It'd be very, very difficult to see. Great question. Okay, so we looked at the blacks. Let's look at the whites. And there's 4 whites. We have the gray titanium. It's our newest. So gray titanium. We have the buff titanium, gray titanium, buff titanium, and there's the wash. We have the titanium white. It's right there, titanium white. And as I said last time, buff titanium is PW6:1. The gray titanium is PW6, pigment white 6, and titanium is PW6. These two are the same. And again, that's a classification issue. It's how they were classified. If I was the head of it, I would have called this one as it is PW6 for titanium, PW6:1 for buff, and I would have called gray titanium PW6:2, but they didn't. So we put down exactly what the regulated body calls it. Okay, and then the last one is the Chinese white. People say, what's the difference, John, between the Chinese white and the titanium white? Not really a huge amount of difference. It really comes down to preference, artist preference, because they're very close. They're very close. It just comes down to your preference, which one you want. So gouache is just it's really not the difference between what a white is and what a gouache is. It's what's the difference between a watercolor and a gouache. So gouaches are made to be opaque, and they're originally done that so when there was photographs being taken, you wouldn't get that that brightness coming back. It'd be more muted. And so historically, they would put a Chinese white to make it more opaque. You could put a titanium white, and you'd have to play with it, but it would certainly make it opaque. But the Chinese white's going to make it more opaque. So gouaches are, they're not made to be transparent. And so Mary's saying the white would usually be more, yes. So you could definitely add the white, like Mary's saying, the Chinese white to a watercolor to make it more opaque. And that's what a gouache is doing. A gouache is making the color more opaque. Okay. We've been playing with gouaches for some time, and I look forward to showing those to you at some point. But I can't let the cat out of the bag because I get in trouble from my marketing department. Okay, so that's the whites. Yeah, the whites are interesting, Stella, because Stella's a major painter and does beautiful work, some of which I own. Some artists will leave the paper as the white, but there's a lot of artists that actually use the different types of white. So I always think what I see myself doing is providing tools, and then you're the master mechanics using those tools as you see fit to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And so I'm always thankful to be on that journey with you. All right. We also have, here's an example of alizarin crimson and permanent alizarin crimson. And that's because, probably as you know, we discussed a little bit last time, the alizarin crimson is a coal tar derivative and is fugitive, but it's historic. It has a great pedigree to it. The masters used it. It's a very beautiful color. We made the permanent, so if someone wanted to use the permanent, they could use the permanent and still get the beauty of the alizarin crimson, but in a more permanent version, 100+ years. Oh, that's interesting. So Sandy says she uses Potter's Pink. We'll play with Potter's Pink at some point. in a similar way to buff titanium and gray titanium. So last week I was asked about the Mayan colors. So I thought I'd bring those today and show you the Mayan colors. And over the time, we'll go over all the different families. We'll go over the pyrroles, we'll go over the perylines, we'll go over the quinacridones, the Hanzas, we'll go over all of them. So here we have the Mayan colors. And I'm going to show you each one. There's only one of them, which is a Primatech. And that is the Mayan Blue Genuine. And that's because it has a historic context. It was used by the Mayans, who infused indigo into clay and then fused it in a very special process, making Mayan blue pigment. And that pigment was then used as paint. It's still in parts of pyramids, etc. They still find very, very, very blue Mayan blue color. It's lasted, centuries. It's a very, very long-lasting color. These right here are made by the same company. It's the University of Texas that made us the Mayan blue, and they called these Mayan, but these have no pedigree, so they are not historic. They're not genuine. They're not Primatechs. So just one more time, the name Mayan blue comes because this is the way the original Mayans, builders of all those beautiful temples, etc., beautiful artwork, they used this blue, this shade in their art production. And the Mayans infused indigo into clay. And that's the same way this is made. So it's made in the same exact way, and that's why it's called Mayan Blue Genuine. Okay, it's not a mineral. It's not a mineral, but it's a historic process, and it's a historic pigment, and that's why we call it Mayan, because it was made by the Mayan people. These right here are made by the same company, and they decided to use the word Mayan. However, we have these in our general colors because they have no pedigree. They weren't made or used by the Mayan people. Only this color was. So there's the Mayan dark blue. There's the Mayan yellow. There's the Mayan orange. The Mayan red. And the Mayan violet. So Kathy says, is it true that if you put a faded color in a dark place, it will come back? Or once the color fades, it is gone forever? So Kathy, when we're talking about the pigments we use for watercolor, true pigments, not dyes, but pigments, if most of these pigments will absolutely live way past us. If you're using a new tube and it's a series 1 or series 2, it's a light fastness of 2, and I'm going to post this so you all have it. A light fastness of 2 is 100 years. A light fastness of 1 is 100 plus years. And then a 3, 50 to 70 plus. So these will live past us, even if they were made today. If you do a fugitive color and it goes away, it's not going to come back. So fugitive is fugitive. Fugitive means it's only going to be around for so long. So Stella, there are 2 of them. There is the Opera Pink, which is fugitive, and there is the Alizarin Crimson. because it's a cold hard derivative. So those are the only two that we have. And if you remember from last time, the opera pink is also made with quinacridone magenta. So even if when the fugitive part of it goes away, you're still going to see a color because the magenta is it's going to last at least 100 years, if not longer. They're called the Mayan just because of the process. It was the process the Mayans did, and the professors that actually made the Mayan blue genuine used a very similar process for the other ones. Very similar process. However, because historically the Mayans only did the blue, even though the red and the violet use the same process, you can't call that historic. You can only call it historic if the people that are of history, i.e. the Mayans, did that during their time. So we can call this one Mayan blue Primatech. We can call these Mayan blue, but we don't put those in the same category. These are just of the general colors, right? So that's the difference between the two. Okay. Oh, let's look at Cascade Green. I brought Cascade Green for you somewhere. Let me see. Cobalt, Viridian. I want to show you Cascade Green. Okay, give me just a second and let me see if I can go find that because I want to show you Cascade Green. All right, well, somewhere I have Cascade Green. I can't find it. So, but what I wanted to show you was Cascade Green is a co-precipitated pigment. It's two pigments that are bound together. And those two pigments, because it's co-precipitated, it's considered one pigment. But it's made up of raw sienna, and it's made up of PB15. So it's made up of phthalo blue, not either one of these shades, just phthalo blue. So it's made with phthalo blue and raw sienna. And those combined together give us the Cascade Green. And when the Cascade Green, when water's introduced as a vehicle, it'll break that particle apart. It'll break those two pigments apart, and that's why you get the really interesting effect of Cascade Green. And we'll go ahead and we'll play with that at a later time. Let's see, this is was interesting. You saw it in your tuber said it was faded in her direct sunlight on a window, but if you put it in a dark closet, the color returns. So the question there is, are they using a dye or are they using a pigment? Color doesn't come back from a pigment, and that's because of UV light. So that'd be interesting. I can't see that happening. As many years as I've done colors, I've never heard of that. The same principle in museums why they don't let you shoot cameras is because once it's gone, it's gone. But that's interesting. Okay. So let's go over I put online so I'm going to show you next week the Primitex. So the Primitex start with a mineral, and they start with our geologist Bruce, and Bruce right now is in I believe he's in Tucson. The Tucson show should be starting. No, Tucson show is next month, but he's in Arizona, and he sources all of our minerals. Once we source the mineral, for example, this one here is Lapis. So he sources the mineral Lapis, and then we take that and we use a jaw mill. A jaw mill can take a mineral about the size of a basketball, and you put it between these two plates, and these plates go back and forth very slowly. And because crystals, a mineral is, because it's crystal, it has a lot of lattices. And just slight pressure, very slight pressure, will break that mineral into pieces. So it goes about the size of a basketball here. It would come out about the size of a golf ball or smaller. And then when put into the next machine, which is called a hammer mill, when put into the hammer mill, about the size of a golf ball or smaller, it comes out about the size of a grain of rice. And then from there, we put it into what's called a ball mill. Here's a ball mill. And it just tumbles and tumbles and tumbles and tumbles, like this image. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me, right into the microphone. Sorry. A ball mill, and it tumbles and tumbles and tumbles, almost like your dryer. Tumbles and tumbles and tumbles and tumbles. And the size we want to get to is 40 microns, about half the width of a piece of paper, about half the size of a human hair, if you want to think about it that way. And from here, it ends one part of the processing. There's a whole lot more that happens past here. To separate certain colors, we use oils, because the oil lets the particles separate into different levels, and then we'll take that particular level off over and over. So a lot of different processes happen past this step. Once that's done, however, we're going to be able to start making paint. And we do that just like you're making something in the kitchen. We get a vessel, and a vessel is anything that we can put the material into. And inside that vessel, we'll put gum arabic, we'll put distilled water, we'll put the material. We always use distilled water in chemistry because it has less things than tap water. Tap water can have, depending where you live, can have fluoride, can have chlorine, can be heavy water, having different minerals inside of it, for example. So we use distilled water. For you as an artist, if you can use distilled water or bottled water, that's always very, very good. Will any water work? Yes, it will. If you can, however, I would certainly suggest distilled or bottled water. Once we have all that inside of the vessel, we then go to the mixer. And the mixer is very similar to what you have at home. It's just very large. This one, for example, when it's fully compressed, is 6 feet high. And when it's elongated, goes up to 18 feet. The shaft is about 5 feet. And the blade, which is this right here, this is the blade right here. The blade goes this way. It's the size of a dinner plate. So this can mix vessels up to 600 gallons. We could probably do 1,200 gallons with this mixer. And all the mixer does, it puts everything into solution. That's its only job, is to put things into solution. We have different types of mixers. We have some that have sweep blades. And a sweep blade is almost like you doing frosting, and the frosting gets on the side of the pan, and you get the sweep blade, it's like a spatula, and you just throw it back into the center. So very sticky ones. If they're not so sticky, then we use just a single shaft. Once we're done that, we're going to put it onto the 3-roll mill, which is a de-aeration mill. We're going to take the water out, and we're going to put the gum arabic around each particle. Otherwise, we have what's called an agglomerate. It's where they all stick together. And they stick together because of static electricity. Okay. What we're trying to accomplish is getting rid of the agglomerate, where all these particles, because they have an electrostatic charge, and they want to stay together. We want to break them apart, and we do that by force, and then putting gum arabic around each one. That gives us the same amount of reflection or refraction, which means we have no hot spots or cold spots. Okay, we don't want hot spots or cold spots. If you look at a lot of the masters' works, you can look with your eye and say, I wonder why that's a little bit more dull than that other area. Was he or she trying to do that? And for the most part, they didn't have the strength in their hands to make everything the same. And that's what we're doing with these machines. These machines could put up, 2,000 plus pounds of pressure. So this is called a dispersion mill, and what it does, it's going to break the particle apart. It's going to allow gum arabic to go around the particles, therefore to spread out, and it's going to get rid of any air that the mixer puts in. So just like at home when you put a mixer into something and you hit the button, you watch it go puff out, and that's because you're forcing air into your mixture. Well, we don't want to sell you air, and the way we do that is this machine squeezes it back out again. So it de-aerates the process as well. Now the interesting thing, people say, well, there's a real art to using this equipment. Because I can set these rolls, they have to be computerized because the human eye really can't see it, but I can set them to 20 microns. What that means is I can actually take I can actually take the French ultramarine, which is a larger particle, and if I don't set my machinery right, I can turn it into ultramarine, because the difference between this is probably only 10 microns, and I can make that change with this machine. So it's really having everything, having the chemistry right, having the formulation right, and having masters on the machine that know exactly how to use these machines. We have people that have been on these and using the machines for 30 plus years. They can actually touch a color or look at a color, tell you what it is, tell you whether it's going to be fat, thin, whether it's going to be sticky, long. They're just really, really good at looking at batches. This is kind of what it looks like when it's on the mill right here. So one of these is a pickup blade, and then two of these have counter-rotating rolls, and they're tearing rolls. They tear the material apart. And then we'll just do this back and forth, back and forth. And every time we do a process, the chemist has to release it. So when we first put the ingredients together, the chemist has to release that to the next step. Once it's mixed, the chemist has to release that to the next step. When it's milled, the chemist has to release that to the next step. So the chemist is always involved with the person making it to make sure everything is perfect. Okay, so once that's done, and I'm asked sometimes, well, how long does that process take? That process can take, that whole process of the Primatech can take a week, can take 2 weeks. Because one of the things that we want to do, and I'll go over this further when I actually show you the minerals, is if you crush the crystal, there's no more color. It's very similar to getting powdered sugar and granulated sugar. They're both sugar. If you take the granulated and put it next to the window in the sun, you see it acts like a little prism, and you see all beautiful colors, blues and greens and reds. But if you take the powdered sugar, it's deader than a doornail. So the magic when you deal with a Primatech is not to destroy the crystal, to try to get it very small by cleaving and cleaving and cleaving and cleaving, but don't destroy the crystal. Destroy the crystal, it's done. No matter if it's a Primatech or a synthetic, once it comes to this, how paint is made, it's all made in the same fashion. Once we have the pigment, which is done differently, when making the paint, we use the same machinery in the same manner. And that can take 2 days for a color. It can take 2 weeks for a color. There's just lots of steps, and every pigment behaves differently. Once we're done that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put it in tubes, and we either use a hand filling tube or we use a faster tube processor. This is a movie how paint is made. It shows you the Lapis. I would really suggest that you watch it. It's easy to Google it. Daniel Smith, How Paint is Made. And then we go over granulation. This is the thing that we've been talking about quite a bit, granulation. And granulation is caused by differential specific gravity. And where the particle goes on paper, for example. If we looked at this, which is moon glow, which is made up of the anthraquinoid red, the ultramarine, and the viridian, the anthraquinoid red is very, very light, and it stays at the very top of the mountain. The ultramarine, a little bit heavier, stays in the middle, and the viridian goes to the bottom. That's what gives us our granulation of the moon glow. Okay, and then this is about PV19, which I'm going to go over with you next time. I don't want to rush today. I want to be able to go through step by step with you, and I'll also talk about size. I used to love giving tours. A whole lot with COVID, it's just impossible. It's impossible because I need to assure my people are at least 6 feet apart. They're protected by plexiglass. I just want to do everything possible to make sure my staff is protected, just like I hope all of you are protected. But when that opens up at some point, I'd like to do a tour for a group. Can people molding their own, this is Paula, can people molding their own watercolor crush the crystal, or is there not enough force? Paula, I would say there's not really enough force for you to do it. Could you do it? If you stayed on the whole long time, you probably could. But I would strongly suggest for anybody to try to do one of their own watercolors. It may not come out well, but it's like anything else. There's something neat about doing it yourself. You understand the process more when you do it yourself. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. So that's right, Mary. It depends on how much muscle you put into it and how long you stay on it. Yep. So could you? Yes. If you did a synthetic, pretty much super difficult for you to do it. Very, very difficult. Difficult for you to take it and go from one size into the other size. It takes a lot of pressure to do it. You wouldn't be able to. Okay. So with that, I'm sorry I started up late. Thank you for staying with me. I appreciate it. Please leave me messages. I really want to make this meaningful for you. It's a lot of fun for me. And so I hope it's a lot of fun for you. So with that, I'm going to sign off for today. Thank you for being with me. I always appreciate it. You know what I might do, Mary, and Paula, sometime during the session in the next coming weeks, I'll bring something in. I'll bring a couple of mortar pestles in, and we'll play around a little bit. We'll kind of make our own color. I'll bring some distilled water. I'll bring some gum arabic, and maybe we'll just play around and maybe make one or two colors ourselves. I think that would be kind of fun. All right, with that, everyone, thank you so very much. I always appreciate you being with me. Let me turn this here. I don't know what went on today. I must have hit a wrong button, but Facebook just would not let me out. But I'm very grateful that they have this platform that we can all talk with each other. So thank you all very much. Always my pleasure to be with you. Bye-bye, everybody.